The thumbnail to texture tool now supports opacity and setting your own background. It's nice to be able to generate a texture without opacity so that we can use you can see in this example, it's on a plane and also, it's also on a decal. And these three correspond to these three assets over here. I've added this plugin's link to the GitHub page in the video's description. And you can also find it once you copy it in your project in your plugins asset creation. And the documentation will link to the first YouTube video about this tool. In this video, I'll go over the functionality that I added to this plugin. You can find the plugin settings under Edit, Project Settings, and then scroll all the way down. And then in the plugin section, there's the thumbnail to texture editor defaults. So these two I already covered in the first video. So I'll just go ahead and skip ahead to the new settings. So now there is an option of using a transparent background and also of using a custom background material. I have a few blueprints and a static mesh that I want to generate a nice texture for it. Let's say in the case of inventory screen or something nice and stand-in that doesn't look half bad and doesn't have that checkered board. So what I can do is I could just right click and export to texture. And so what this will do is it'll export them with their checkered board background. So if this is what you need, then you can just have the default settings. But if you want to have a transparent background, you can check this here. And then I will just right click, export to texture. And you'll see the first time you export, they might have some weird shading or sometimes they might not even show up. So you might have to do it twice. I'll try to figure that part out and update the plugin when I find that out. Now there are textures that have a transparent background and you can use it in materials and use the alpha as a mask because it'll be in its own channel. So one thing to note, or might come in as a challenge, is that the background image that I use for the transparent background is, I chose magenta because I figured that it might be a color that not a lot of assets use. But if you do use that color or something close, you'll notice that I'll just turn that off and turn the transparent background. So if I try to export this as a transparent background, export to texture, you'll notice that a lot of it is cut off. That's because it's very close to this material. So in this special case, you can always open up this material that I use for the opacity mask, and you can change the color to be something very different from that color. So in this case, I think we could totally be safe with just white, or I could also use a very bright green. So I'll just use white. Okay. And then when I right click, export to texture, okay, it's missing a bunch of that. So I will use green. So this is because it has a big cutoff threshold. So I need a threshold because the color that's rendered is different than this color. So that part also I haven't figured too much about it, and I'm not super knowledgeable about color spaces and textures. So in our case, we're just going to change it to a color that's not featuring into this asset. So a bright green could do the trick. Okay, so apply. Right. And then when I right click, export to texture, there you go. That looks pretty nice. So you'll notice there's a little green border, but it's very hard to notice in game. It's pretty small. And you could always make the threshold bigger or smaller. Just see what looks the best. So for now, I'll just go ahead and change this back to the nice magenta color that I had. So I think it was 101. There you go. So let's say we want to use a background for all of our nice textures. So we can uncheck use transparent background and then check use custom material background. Okay, and if we navigate to this here, so you will have nothing as a default. But if you want to have some nice defaults, you can navigate to the plugin folder and then thumbnail to texture. And there's a few materials that I've chosen that will work nicely with this functionality. And if you can't see the plugin's content, it might just be that you're missing the flag show plugin content. Okay, so I actually want to use this nice blue floor plane material. Okay, and then I'll just select all of these ones and export to texture. So nice. You'll see that now they have that background, including this one. All right, so you can really have any background material, and pretty much what it is there is an infinite plane in the background and a sky sphere, and I'm just applying this material to them. So a regular material that's lit might show up a line over here. So I'll just show that example. If I go ahead and choose this background material here, so I'm just gonna navigate to it again, and then let's use this custom material background. Okay, and if I output this, I'll just export to texture. So you'll notice that it does cast a shadow and there is a line. So that is where the sky sphere comes in. So I dug really deep into the code just to find out how the texture or how the thumbnail was being generated. And my code pretty much just makes sure that these two can have their material be custom, or that you can actually set the material of these two shapes. So yeah, at the moment, this plugin only supports static meshes and blueprints that have a visual representation. I had some trouble with the skeletal mesh, so if anyone has input for that one, that would be great. Another thing that may happen when you open your editor and it's the first time you're right-clicking exporting to texture is that it might show up as just a bunch of blank textures. So all you have to do is right-click and export to texture again. And there they are. I'm also very curious why this happens and would welcome any input. The code is on GitHub. Adding this new functionality to this plugin took a lot of researching, and it was very interesting. If you liked this video and found this plugin useful, you can find me over at Patreon at a link I will share in my video description. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.